Welcome back to the Gracefully Wild Soul podcast. I am feeling good to be back here with you this week. I just came home from a women's festival in Canada, and there's a lot of moving parts that happen. So it's nice to come back and ground into this space and be home in that comfort zone. But this week, I want to have a bit more of a conversation with you. So, we're going to be talking about what we give up or what we're willing to give up to be in more integrity with our true selves, with our authentic and highest version of ourselves. So, let's dive into the conversation. Welcome to the Gracefully Wild Soul podcast. I'm KIRSTEN, a mother and soul guide, and this is a space where your soul is witnessed and the frequency of your heart is felt. Together, we will have intimate conversations about the essence of life, the beauty of your soul's path, and our evolution as women and as mothers. Through channeled words, lived experiences, and the wisdom of nature's rhythms, the soul, and the sacred feminine, this is where the gracefully wild woman begins to rise. All right, this is going to be a bit more of a loose, kind of free-flowing conversation, my thoughts, my voice, and so I hope you stay with me on this journey and this conversation. And I would always love to hear from you if you are on this path or are thinking about this path or, wherever you are in life, just, reach out. I want to hear from you. I love building community and coming off of this women's festival. It's just such a beautiful reminder what we can accomplish and what we can see and move through when we are in community. So reach out. All right, let's dive into this conversation. I originally was going to focus solely on one particular item that I have released from my life in the past 3 years. But I think that this conversation goes so much deeper, and I don't want to frame it around just this one issue because it really is just, one little piece of the puzzle. And, ultimately this entire conversation is about what we are willing to give up in order to make space for our fullest expression. And coming home from this retreat that happened over summer solstice, that was literally a community of hundreds of women, just women. This was a women's festival. And being in this space where you could just see women in their fullest expression, like there was no holding back. And I'm going to be emotional about it for a second because it is so rare. It is so rare to be in a space where you can feel that you can fully express yourself. And when I mean express yourself, that means everything down to what you are wearing, to what you are saying, to how you move your body, to the conversations that you're having, to showing and feeling emotion, to just everything, being in your full expression. And no one is there judging you. No one is there holding an expectation or telling you that you need to shift. I saw a workshop. There was, several workshops that were happening over the course of this several day festival. From a distance, I was watching this workshop from a distance because I had my girls with me and I was kind of chasing them around and finding where I was meant to be. But this workshop was clearly a rage workshop, a place to hold space for rage and pain and hurt. And yes, there was yelling, there was anger and rage coming from the body and a release that was occurring. And when and where do we get to do that? when and where do we get to just let it go so we can make space for our fullest expression? And so today's conversation really is about that. And I'm going to talk about a couple things that I have let go in my life in order to find my way, to navigate my way back to my fullest expression. And, that's not an easy, this is not a light conversation. It's not an easy topic. And it is also very nuanced and complex. And certainly, this conversation is not going to cover every aspect of my journey, but I want to just put it out there. I want to create a platform, a moment, a conversation that kind of just maybe puts a bookmark for you in this chapter of your life, to ask yourself maybe where there could be an opportunity to create more space for you to come into your fullest expression, for you to really shine your light out into the world. And so I'm going to just kind of weave in a little bit of my journey and some of the lessons that I've taken from my journey and some of the things that I have given up in order to arrive here. So I want to rewind the clock a little bit. And I didn't just all of a sudden decide like, hey, I'm going to just, give up X and Y and Z in order to come into my fullest expression. It was a bit of this it's a bit of this smackdown, to be honest. And when I look back and when I sum it all up, I always come back to the archetype of the goddess. There is a descent. There is a darkness. There is a shedding, a burning that has to happen in order for us to rise from the ashes. We have to go through the mud and the muck in order to bloom like a lotus. We have to burn the fire to rise like the phoenix. And so in the moments that you're going through this, that maybe you don't know you're going through it, where you're like, I'm releasing, I'm letting go, I'm saying goodbye to something, maybe that's intentionally or not intentionally, it is really hard. It is lonely. It is sad. It is aching. It feels like you don't know where the light is, which way is up and which way is down. And so I want to honor that because I have gone through that myself. But I started this journey by just opening myself up to possibilities. I opened myself up to the possibility that I wanted to try something different. I wanted to weave a different path. I wanted to live my life differently, or at least open myself up to the possibility of living my life differently. And that started when I was really drawn back to Reiki, so this energetic tool, this healing modality. And so when I went through my Reiki attunements, I began to go through this natural purging process. And they tell you that it's like a warning label. I mean, kind of, not really. They don't give you like this full warning label, but it's this like warning label. Hey, by the way, as you enter into this new energetic being, this new kind of layer of yourself where you're deepening into your relationship with yourself, your whole self, your energetic self, your physical self, your mental self, your spiritual self, your soul self, you are going to say goodbye to some things. And that might not be easy. That might be hard. And you might not expect it. It might be the last thing you expect. And so they kind of tell you, TV shows, people, food, alcohol, or other substances are going to, feel like they don't belong anymore. And so that is something that actually did happen for me. I began to notice that I didn't want to watch the same television shows. In fact, I didn't want to watch television at all. I didn't want to check on the news. I, felt very triggered and, sensitive to every image and word and story. And so, just slowly I began to create distance from myself and all of those different things, from the TV, from the news, from social media, whatever it was. And, this was back in 2021. So, COVID life was happening and was very different. And we were all, I think, sensitized in different ways to what was happening. And so I guess it was kind of a natural placeholder for me to begin to distance myself from all of these things. And then, I began to notice a distance between myself and different foods. I had a different relationship with eating meat. I've always eaten meat. I've always eaten fish and meat products, but I began to notice that I wanted to kind of distance myself a bit from different meat products and really move a bit more towards seafood and fish, or even just the lighter meat like chicken. And so, again, this was just happening as I was going through this attunement in my Reiki training. And then ultimately, I began to have this sensitive relationship with alcohol. And, I had drank alcohol since before I was legally allowed to. I would go to Canada, and Canada has a drinking age at 19, and drink alcohol. And I was raised around a family environment where alcohol was very much part of a social setting, a social environment. And so ultimately began to kind of question my relationship with alcohol. And, I was pregnant for almost 2 years straight. My kids are very close in age. And so, I had some time and distance from alcohol. And I definitely have some reflections from that time period. But as I was going through this Reiki attunement, this process, I really began to just try to understand my relationship with it. But again, these are all just like little breadcrumbs that are happening in the moment. There's nothing that's like anchoring in. And so that was kind of the beginning, the initiation for me to create space in my life to live differently, to see things differently, to approach things differently. And that started with letting go. That started with just honestly questioning everything. And I think that that can be really hard in our day to day lives where we get so set in routines. We get so set in how we've always done things that to take a step back and actually question like why you're doing something or why you are in a certain relationship or, why it is that you are maybe reaching for that glass of wine. It's the why that we can distance ourselves from because that's the work. That's the hard stuff. That is where we actually have to dig in and we can't, kind of just check out from what's happening. And so as I began to have this kind of distant relationship, or again, this questioning relationship with these things, I just began to remove myself in little bits and pieces. And I began to do this intentionally because I wanted to see. I wanted to see what it was like on the other side. And I even began to go to things like vanity items. I slowly began to question dyeing my hair. I began to question putting nail polish on my nails. I began to question, the products that I was buying or consuming. And I know that it seems maybe trivial where you're like, oh, well, maybe she's just changing her mind or shifting or just living life differently. And there is, a little bit to that, to all of these things. But also at the same time, it was, again, coming back to that relationship. How is it that I want to be in relationship with these things? Because forever and ever and ever, I've dyed my hair. I was a redhead. I'm naturally like a dark blonde, but I've bleached my hair, dyed my hair. And so I started with the question mark, like, who am I doing this for? Why am I doing this? And again, it was breaking down these expectations. Like, who am I living my life for? Who am I, trying to do all of these things for? These beauty metrics or, the alcohol. Why is it that I have friendships that are anchored into this substance or this piece of my life? Why is it that, I feel that I have to turn on that television show or whatever? And ultimately, the conclusions I began to come to when I started questioning all of these things were the following. First and foremost, these were coping mechanisms. Well, that was the first kind of, I don't know, I guess aha moment that I had when it came to, in particularly, alcohol. I don't think that I was necessarily using alcohol in a way that became so abusive that I couldn't live without it. And, alcohol addiction and alcoholism, all of these things are real. And I just don't think for me personally, I was in that zone. I was probably in some spectrum of that zone in some ways. And, and just trigger warning if this is, an opportunity where this conversation becomes difficult for you, feel free to, again, turn it off or revisit. But, I definitely had flushes of alcoholism in my family. I certainly saw it. I have, family members that struggled with it. And again, I just was in this stage of like questioning the relationship that I had with alcohol. And I certainly did use alcohol as a place to check out, like, oh, I've had a long day or it's been a rough, week or whatever it is. And so again, just questioning that. Why is it that I'm reaching for something in order to tap out? And ultimately, I wasn't in a place or space in my life for a long time to feel all that I had. And so I began to notice that I was using some of these things as a place to step out of the difficult moments, to find some sort of reprieve. And that included, other things, social media. That included television shows. This idea that we need to step out of our day-to-day life because it's so stressful and or we're so just in this, like fight or flight response all the time is when we will reach for something. And the things that I was reaching for were not healing me. They were keeping me in this state of fight or flight, really, to be honest. It was keeping me in this state. It wasn't actually offering my body, my nervous system, my soul what it needed. What I needed in these moments were rest. What I needed in these moments were quiet space to myself. What I needed in these moments were things to move my body and move energy out of my system. I needed to cry. I needed to feel. I needed to be with that void, that dark space that we hold. And I was doing everything I could to navigate around it, to not go there. And when we don't go there, when we're unwilling to go to that dark space, that void, we cannot have a full expression. Our fullest expression only comes when we honor the dark and the light. And so it's really important that in order to come back to that place of your fullest expression, that you do go to those places that you have been hiding from. And I wasn't doing that. And I was using these different responses to not go there. So, coping mechanism, that was definitely it. The numbing agent. How do I cope with my emotions, these deep feelings, whatever I don't want to deal with? I'm turning to these things to do that. And another lesson that I began to notice, again, it's kind of in this similar realm of coping mechanism, is a mask for comfort. I have this ultimate place inside of me where I feel like I don't belong. And it really is part of my cosmic makeup. I know that from doing my own soul work. I know that from digging into the pieces of my astrology and my Akashic records. And I know, from coming home from this trip, I was like writing in my journal. And I think I'm just finally at the point where I'm like, this feeling is never going to leave me. And it's not meant to. And that's part of the medicine that I'm still like working through and grappling with, that this misplacement feeling or this feeling like I don't belong is going to continue to be with me for the rest of my life. But I was reaching for these items, in particular, alcohol in social settings in order to find some sort of comfort in these spaces. When I slowly began to pull away from alcohol, it was a slow draw. And now I'm at this point of almost 3 years of not having alcohol in my life. And before that, it was kind of leading up to it for 2 years where I was like slowly stepping away and just slowly questioning it and saying no in different places. But I noticed when I would continue to go to social gatherings with people and alcohol is being consumed, and I would make this conscious choice not to have a drink. I noticed like later on in the evening, I had this moment. I was like at this wine event with some fellow moms, and it was focused on wine. And I'm happy to go to that. I'm okay to be there. I actually think other people are more uncomfortable with me not drinking and being in that setting than I am. I'm fine. I have come to a place where I know my relationship and what I want it to be and what I don't want it to be with alcohol. And I was in this kind of wine event social setting, and I realized towards the end, like if I had been drinking, if I had been participating in this as I had done in the past for many, many years, that I would be reaching for that extra glass of wine at the end of the night. Not because, it was like, oh my God, this is this amazing wine and I just want to savor it and be in it. It was like, again, this like comfort blanket. Like, okay, everybody else is doing it and we're still here. And I need something to do with my hands and like I have to talk and socialize and I want to feel like I fit in. I want to feel like I want to fit in. I feel like I need to fit in. And the only way that I can do that is by having this substance. So there was this deep energetic cord that was like attached for me and this substance that kept me in this loop of staying small, kept me in this loop of just hiding behind this mask of like, I'm going to stay comfortable. I'm not going to rock the boat. I'm not going to, be, the discomfort in the room. And I'm going to just keep fitting in with everyone. I'm going to like fit the mold. I'm going to stay in the square box. And so I just noticed that this was the relationship that I had with alcohol and ultimately other things as well. But this is probably the most clear example for me. And these lessons are all kind of like intertwined and looped in different ways, but they can show up differently when it comes to other places. And so this comfort idea, this fitting in, takes me back to kind of these vanity metrics that I had been using. I gave up makeup in COVID. I think a lot of people did. It's like, what are we doing? We're not in these social settings. We're not doing all these things. And it was like, F it. I don't want to put on makeup. And I used to be that girl. Like I was full face makeup, the concealer, the foundation, the mascara, the lip liner, all the things, every single day, all the time, all the time, all the time. And, the clothes and how I would, spend time and money curating all of these things. I would curate. I would spend so much time and energy curating. And it was really a forward facing life, and these vanity metrics came into play again, where it was like, in order to feel like I fit in, I felt like I had to do all these things. I, was just continuing the things that I had done from a young age, wearing the makeup, dyeing my hair, having the new shade of nail polish. Like, oh, am I going to go for red on my toes or orange or whatever it was? And again, there's no shade. If this is something that's true to you, then I praise you. I love you. This is amazing. I just know for me, the journey that I was going on, I had been living in this circle, this loop of meeting other people's expectations of what I was supposed to look like, what I was supposed to do, how I was supposed to act, the beverages I was supposed to consume in order to fit in. And so to me, questioning these and ultimately pulling back was me resetting the relationship I had with all of these things. And, you know, the purpose, the reason for all of that was because if I was constantly living in this loop of trying to live up to the expectations and the image of other people, I would never, ever, ever, ever be able to honor my true self. I wouldn't even know her. I wouldn't even get an opportunity to know her. And coming back from this women's festival, this was such a deep reminder of that. It's like, wear what you want, say what you want, obviously with love and kindness. But like, my point being is that there's so much of our self-expression that we hold back, so much of it. And that self-expression does come in all of these things: what you wear, how you speak, what you share, the things that you are inviting into your life, how you spend your money, how you spend your time and energy. You know, my freedom of movement felt so restricted after I look back on my journey with alcohol and even just social settings. I was so caught up in, okay, if I have, you know, 2 glasses of wine, then I shouldn't, you know, I need to Uber and I have to pick up the Uber here and then go here. And oh, what about my high heels? And like just all of these like logistics. It's kind of crazy that I would, you know, invest so much time and money. And ultimately, what that all means is energy. My energy was directed in all of these places. I could not direct it towards what I was really meant to do, where I was meant to shine. And so, you know, these energetic cords, these leaks were happening for me everywhere in my life. And when we're just constantly leaking energy out of ourselves, we actually don't have the opportunity to sit with our true selves, to create space for our expression to come through, because we're just pushing it out there, pushing it towards everybody else. Well, if I do this, then I will meet this person's expectation. I will, you know, fit into their mold, whatever it is that they want. And that's just not you. That's not you. Some of the, I guess, side effects, you know, it's like, okay, here's the warning label, right? From, you know, going through your Reiki attunement. And then ultimately there's also side effects. And, you know, you see those drug commercials and it's like they have to talk a million miles a second in order to say all the side effects that happen from some sort of pharmaceutical drug. Well, you know, the reality is that when you come into a truer expression of yourself, there are side effects. And those side effects can be life altering because ultimately you are disrupting the status quo. You are no longer willing to accept the status quo. And that's hard for other people. You know, I mentioned before that I actually felt like me giving up alcohol or me distancing myself from alcohol was easier on me, or easier, it felt easier than it did when it came to other people. I naturally began to fall out of social settings. And, you know, and there are certain social settings that I didn't want to be in. That was a choice. And then there were certain social settings where I think people decided that I shouldn't be there or I wouldn't want to be there. They decided for me. And I think it's one of those barometers where it's like, you know, that's okay. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't feel disruptive to your life or that it doesn't create some hurt feelings. Change can be hurtful and that feeling is okay. And so part of that process of me like shedding all of these things and like going there with myself meant I had to fucking feel all of that. Like I had to honor that in myself. You know, I had to like feel everything. I couldn't find the escapism in some other avenue. You know, I was stripping away the stuff in order to find my pure light. And so again, that has the side effects that can affect relationships, who you continue to be friends with, maybe who you continue to be in a romantic relationship with, maybe a job. It can also look like, again, radical changes, you know, ending something, moving somewhere. All of these things are, you know, quote unquote, potential side effects to coming deeper into your truth. And you have to decide, you know, somewhere down the line, is it a better path to honor yourself and be in more integrity with yourself, your voice, your truth, whatever that might be, than it is to live the life, the story, the image, the identity that belongs to someone else. That's a decision that you have to make. And you are going to be challenged and questioned with that along the way. When it was like I was ready to leave, the legal profession, oh, poof, there's a job offer for you, right? Like as soon as you're like, I am moving forward in this direction, the universe is going to be like, nope, we're going to test you. Hey, you're not going anywhere yet. And you have to decide. You have to decide in that moment. And so there will be tests, there will be question marks, there will be side effects, things will leave. But ultimately, what you are doing is you are carving the most beautiful well for you to fill with your light and your true essence. And that does take time, and that does take patience, and that does take letting go. Yeah. So I think maybe 2 other points that I'll make, and because I could probably just keep going on and on about this and all of these things, is one of the things I realized about giving up some of these socially acceptable things, right? I think we're shifting, like alcohol, the relationship with alcohol. I think people are shifting. You see now, like, you go to a restaurant, there's non-alcoholic drinks everywhere. You see these non-alcohol, based events, or even, gatherings or whatever you call them, like kind of, I don't want to call them a bar because it's not a bar, like elixir bars or whatever it is. Like the relationship with alcohol is changing in society, but ultimately something that I kind of struggled with when I was giving up these more socially acceptable norms like drinking or makeup or dyeing my hair or wearing nail polish or just, all of these kind of different items, was the fear, again, coming back to like not fitting in, but a fear of not being fun. Like what was my fun? I didn't really know for a long time, like what brought me joy, what made me laugh, what was my fun, where did I fit in, what community was the right fit for me. And so the fact is that I didn't know all of these things, that I was just kind of, again, rubber stamping these community standards of like, I'll go to this wine event, or I'm going to go shopping here, or I'm going to just keep dyeing my hair because, why would I show my grays, or I've show my natural hair color. I had a fear of being seen. I had a fear of not fitting in. I had a fear of being the boring lady. And frankly, I am kind of the boring lady. I mean, I'm happy to go to bed early. I'm happy to read books. I'm happy to go on nature walks. Maybe you find that fun. So you're my peoples. You're my soul babes. But I had this great fear wrapped up in all of these things. I had these huge identities that I was trying to fit into, the fun lady, the fun mom, the cool girl, the blondie, the whatever it is. And so ultimately this journey asks you to be willing to give up identities. It asks you to be willing to take off the mask. And yes, there are hardships. Yes, there are side effects. But at the end of the road is a deeper relationship with yourself. It is a deeper relationship with your partner or your spouse. It is a deeper relationship with your children. And it ultimately finds you in a deeper relationship with friends and the world. Your soul's path and purpose here, navigating your way back to that. And so I hope on this episode, you feel that there is always space and an opportunity to say no, to set boundaries, to question why you are in relationship with something or someone, and know that sometimes we have to say goodbye in order to walk through the door to meet our most authentic version of ourselves, and that it's okay to choose you. choosing you is a beautiful thing. And so I hope with this episode, you feel that and you know that your journey is right for you and to honor that. Okay, I'll stop my continued conversation. But before I leave, I did pull a card today. Just felt like this deck had such a beautiful way of navigating this conversation. It is the Flowers and Feelings Oracle deck. And I pulled a card that, of course, ironically, but not ironically because nothing's coincidental, is tied to the summer solstice, which we just had on June 21st. And the card is the Ivan da Maria. And it says on the card, magic is all around you. Are you willing to look? And the message that I got from this card really was, are you slowing down to understand and look at the relationship that you have with the world around you? And that's ultimately what this entire conversation is about. If you are just charging through life, disconnected, numbed out, disassociating, then you are missing out on the magic of life. And the magic is all around you. It is in the micro moments, the little things that you see. That is where the magic is living. So stopping and slowing down to really feel, to witness, is how we are able to open more space for the light, to find deeper magic in our lives. So I just love this card. I thought it was really just a beautiful reminder. There's this beautiful goddess wearing white, and behind her is darkness with other women bathing around her. And there are candles with flower crowns floating around. And just feeling into that and shifting how we really perceive life and interpret the world around us is the message. All right, friends, I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Again, if you are interested in a soul reading, I am offering pre-recorded readings throughout the summer. Feel free to take a look at the link in the show notes, and I will catch you on the next episode. Sending you so much love. Bye. Thank you, love, for being here. May you walk forward guided by the wild wisdom of your soul and the truth of your heart. To find me beyond the podcast, you can join my newsletter at soulbabe.com for continual updates on offerings and other teachings, or subscribe to the Gracefully Wild Soul Substack. Until next time.